Welcome to Testimony Tuesday, brought to you by Experience Church of Bethpage. This is Lauren.
And Dave.
And we're blessed to be talking to everyday people who have stories of how God's favor, kindness, and mercy have intervened in their lives. While I am the regular voice you will hear each time, Dave is still hard at work behind the scenes.
But I'll pop in from time to time.
Join us as we experience God's compassion and love through their testimonies. Hello, friends. Before we get started, I want to tell you that the topics discussed in this testimony are sensitive and could possibly bring up emotions that may be somewhat disturbing. Please be sure to listen with caution. If there are younger ears present, it would be best to have adult supervision. Thank you, and may you continue to remain in His love. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Testimony Tuesday. And we are sitting here with our friend Michelle.
Hello, everybody.
And Michelle is here with us from a different church, but we are so blessed that we are connecting with you because we hope that there's more people that you know that would be willing to come forward and share a testimony of God's kindness and love upon them, because we want to get the word out there to more than just our surrounding areas. We want it to really be a ripple effect of how the Holy Spirit can just operate in hearts through people's testimonies. And I was so thankful to Anne-Marie. You know, Anne-Marie came to me at her grandmother's memorial service, and she approached me and said that she heard you speak, and she was so touched. And she said, this woman needs to come on your podcast. And I just felt so encouraged by that, because it's such an answer to prayer for Dave and I. You know, we were really hoping to kind of connect with you know, another church and everything. And it didn't go forward in one situation, but that's okay, because the truth is we know that there's just people out there that need to hear about what God can do in their life too. And we want it to be extended out more. And so I was so encouraged with that. And so was Dave, that, you know, she came and she approached us. It was really an answer to prayer in that moment, because we were feeling a little bit like, I don't want to say discouraged, but just a little disheartened with, you know, rejection we had recently had. And we were really encouraged in that moment to know that this could be a possibility. And so I want to thank you, Michelle, for coming and stepping forward and being so courageous and so willing, and just coming around and saying, hey, listen, I want to meet you, and I want to meet your husband, and I want to come, and you live far out in Long Island, and
thank you for having
made the
us.
trip. And of course, it's been a pleasure just to meet you. And
thank you for having me.
And, you know, I think that I'm excited because I don't know your story, and I don't know where you came from. I mean, I'm just meeting you for the first time today. And even though we spoke on the phone and you were absolutely lovely, and I knew it was a connection right away, I'm still feeling expectation for something to happen in my own heart through your testimony. And I'm believing that people that hear it are going to just be stirred up differently. So that being said, Michelle, can you please share a time that God made His hand known upon you to where, without a shadow of a doubt, you experienced Him differently?
Yes. So I grew up in a home with 6 siblings, including myself, my mom, my dad. My dad was an addict.
Okay.
Extremely bad addict, very abusive.
Okay.
My mom was abusive as well to us. We went to the shrine a lot and lit a candle. That's the only experience I've had close to God. Never knew Him or anything, just through lighting a candle at a shrine at St. Jude's in Shirley. And my dad would beat my mom, and if we cried, we'd get beat too. He would take his binges and go out for days, would leave us with no food, nails on the window so we couldn't get out, locks on the front door, padlocks that he only knew. We didn't go to school. If we did, he would show up to make sure we didn't speak to anybody, because we wasn't allowed to tell anybody what we were dealing with inside the home.
Wow.
We watched our mom get beat all the time. He would think that people were behind walls, so he'd rip apart walls. He would do searches on us to make sure we wasn't hiding anything, to tell people what we were doing or what he was doing. So we lived that life, and I thought that everybody lived a life like that because we lived in a home where we didn't see basically the outside. Oh, it's only our family, and our family knew what was going on. They knew the abuse, the extent abuse, sometimes guns at our head, so we wouldn't tell people. We had to write our will of us dying if we were to die and why we wanted to die because he was going to kill us, and that to say that we wanted to die. We didn't have food. I would eat the paint off my dresser because I was starving, the grass outside. We had a farm, so because we lived in Calverton, so we'd get all the fruit and steal it and eat it, and watermelons and tomatoes, and that was the part of my life that I thought was like great because I was eating. We wasn't allowed to tell people we didn't eat. I was really thin, very well nourished, really bad. I was very skinny. So we lived every single day. That was our life. Like, we saw my mom getting abused, with my dad doing his binges of drugs and stuff like that. And it was just horrible. But my dad always went to the shrine and lit a candle. And I just always thought of that. Like, that's so weird. Like, but again, I thought that that was everybody's life. Because I didn't understand. So one day, my mom ran away and left us there, and she told me she was leaving. We left a couple of times, and she left us there, and she said, I'm going to leave. I have to do this on my own because every time I take you guys, like, it was a burden, basically. And it only made things worse for us because that's when my dad was really off the chain with the drugs and stuff. And he would take us to go pick up his drugs and stuff like that. And one night we were driving back home, and there was a railroad tracks in Calverton, and we were in a blue van, and he pulled over to the side of the road, and he left us in a van for days while he went out into the woods to binge. And we didn't have anything but a rug, like a carpet rug that goes into the van. And there was 6 of us, 3 girls, 3 boys, and we had to share this carpet. I was freezing. It was freezing. It was winter. And I was trying to take a piece up, and my brother took a pencil and stabbed me with the pencil, which I still have the lead in my hand. And I just was so upset. And the lady came, lady did come concerning because there was a van parked on the side of the road with kids in it. We wasn't allowed to say anything. And my father said when he did take off that he had the keys with him. And if we were to say anything or mouth anything, he would kill us. So we were afraid because he did have guns to our heads at night sometimes and lock us up in the attic. So we thought of all that stuff. And we didn't say a peep, but a lady obviously drove past a couple times and saw this blue van sitting on the side of the road, and she knocked, and we begged her to leave because we were so afraid he could come back anytime and we would really get punished. So it was nighttime. I sat up on the front seat of the van, and I was like, looked up to the sky, and I remember saying, God, if you're real, why are we going through this? I just don't understand. All the things that we're dealing with, why are we going through this? So we still went through the abuse and stuff like that for a couple months after that. And my dad drove us with the van and dropped us off in Shirley. And then my aunt dropped us off to my mom, where she was living at Brighter Tomorrow's, a shelter.
How old were you at that time?
About almost 8.
Wow. Okay.
Just before I was turning 8. So then my mom took us. She had no choice because we were left on the side of the road. And I was angry at the time that my brother was allowed to stay, my older brother. But he was like my dad's person that when my dad would beat my mom, he would make my brother beat my mom. So my brother, at the time, I didn't realize until I became older what it really meant while my dad was loving him more. He wasn't really loving him more. He was using him. So I was angry at that. So then we went to live with my mom in a shelter, a woman's shelter, and she said she wasn't allowed to keep us. So foster care came and picked us up. And I was angry, and I looked at the window, and I kept looking at the window like as we're driving off, and my mom's like, she lied to us and said that we were put there because she wasn't allowed to have kids, which other kids lived in this shelter. She just didn't want to deal with us. I guess she had to deal with her own stuff. So we went off and we went to foster homes, and the abuse didn't end there.
Were you together with your siblings?
So we were separated. My younger brother, who was 4 at the time, he lived with my sister because in a foster home because he was the youngest, so he had to live with my older sister in a foster home back then. And then the three of us, my brother and my other sister, lived together in Ridge. And with these
And you
people.
said the abuse didn't stop.
So we lived with them. It was our first foster home. And they had 3 children, not of their own, adopted, 2 boys and 1 girl. And they acted like everything was great. You know, here we are going from our parents to a foster system that we don't know these people. And they put us in a room after the state left, and all 3 of us had to share a room together. And they locked the door. There was a lock outside the door. And that's where we went every single night. And one day they would give us clothes, buy us clothes from the state, would give them money, and they would put them in a basement. We wasn't allowed to wear the new clothes. They only put it on us when the state would come, so we looked good. So we were in this home, and we were put into the rooms, like I said. And one day the foster father asked, because we wasn't allowed outside. The other kids that they adopted were allowed outside. They were playing, they were enjoying life, and I would look out the window and I would see them playing volleyball with the neighbors and stuff, and we were put into this home. And I kept thinking, like, why am I put in here when we were supposed to get away from abuse? So now I'm still questioning God, because now we're put into this home with more abuse. But the abuse didn't start yet, but it was still abuse putting us in a room. Because the door was locked. They had the lock outside. They would take the doorknob and switch it around. So it's my brother and my sister. So the foster father says, I have an idea. He says, if you would take this 2x4 and beat your brother's legs with it and on his feet and beat him with it, I'll let you go outside and play. And I said, I will not beat my brother. So I'll go back in that room. And my sister did, because she wanted to go outside. Then we went and they had another child come in. Her name, I won't say her name, but she was a little girl. She was born with her insides out. So she had like a lot of stomach problems. And one day, my sister, we were laying in bed and she's like, something just happened to me. And I'm like, what? And she told me, and I didn't believe it. Not that I didn't believe her, but I didn't believe it, because here the state put us in a foster home to take us away from being abused. And now this happened. So she said that the guy touched her and stuff. So we're laying in bed. I said, just go to sleep and just go to sleep. So we went to sleep. The next day, the foster dad let everybody go outside and play outside. And I was like, that's so weird, because he never lets us go outside. But he's like, you know what? You guys were good, so I'm going to let you guys go outside. I didn't go outside. I stayed in with the little girl because she wanted to stay and she wasn't allowed to go outside. So I was playing with her. And we were sitting on a couch like this, and he was over there and I was over here, and the little girl was on her stairs sitting, and she was sticking her tongue out back and forth at me. So I was like, oh, going back and forth with her. And he said, if you keep doing that, I'm going to punish you. And I'm like, and I'm going to rip your tongue out. And I'm like, thinking he was kidding, because I'm only 8. So I'm thinking he's kidding around,
Gosh.
So he starts running after me in the house, and he got me into the kitchen. And he, I tried to corner myself because I've already been abused sexually. So I was like going on guard. So I went into the corner of the kitchen, the table, they had a round table, and I tried to get myself into there. And he still, he took me over the table. He did everything but, he just sexually abused me. So I always told myself that everything ever happened, that I would be a voice, because I knew what I lived like before, and nobody helped me. I had a lot of family members that never came and helped us. They just closed what we were dealing with. And his wife came home. I ran up the stairs, and he said, don't tell anybody. And his wife came home, and I asked her, she came up the stairs because I was upstairs and I wasn't outside playing. And she said, everything all right? I said, I really need to talk to you about what happened. And she's like, what happened? I said, but we can't do it here. I need to go for a ride. And she's like, all right. And we got into a car. We drove around to Ridge, where they have this lake. And she took me to it. And I was in the front seat and she was in the driver's seat. And all of a sudden a car pulls up and it's him. And he jumped in the back seat. And he goes, well, she's like, if you got anything to say, you could say. I started telling her before he jumped in the seat a little bit. And I said the rest because I wasn't
Wow.
afraid of it. And he was in the back seat. I wasn't afraid because he did that to me. And I didn't want to, I never thought that people that they put me in would do something like that. So, and he did it to my sister. So she goes, her reaction was, that is not so. He can't even have kids. And I'm like, I didn't say he had sex with me. I said he abused me every which way. So with that, they made us go around kissing each other's feet. They take their shoes off. We had to kiss their feet and everything. And another time, we're still living in this home because the state didn't come yet and they didn't do their monthly visits. I sat at the wrong chair to eat cereal. They would give us cereal. And I sat at the wrong chair because I was so nervous of what happened the day before that they took the cereal that I didn't sit at and put it on a counter to the next day, and I had to eat it.
Oh my goodness.
With the milk and everything.
Yeah, wow.
And it was just a constant thing all the time. We didn't get to eat what they ate and everything. So finally, we called up from school, and I called up the social worker, and I told her that, and she met us at King Cullen, and we told her everything. And we were taken out of that home, all three of us. Then we were put into a temporary housing in St. James, and they were lovely people. I loved them. But we wasn't to stay there. We were only allowed to stay for 30 days because it was just emergency housing.
Okay.
But they kept me for 60. They didn't keep my brother and sister because they were very, I don't want to say bad because they went through so much. They were just acting out really bad. And these people were older. They were in their 60s and they couldn't they had they had a lot of other kids there.
Yeah.
So they kept me, and my brother and sister had gone to different places. My brother was put into St. Timothy's Hills. That was in Riverhead, a boys' home.
Okay.
And then my sister was put somewhere else. So I stayed there, and then because I couldn't stay there long because they were just temporary, I went into another home, and they were in East Islip. And I was just hoping that this was going to be it. And I stayed there with my sister. We were back together, me and my sister, and it was great. It was like, okay, yeah, they didn't treat us 100%, but it was a lot better than we went through.
Sure.
We didn't eat what they ate. They fed us like nothing, basically. We did chores, which I was happy about because it showed me responsibility.
I love that.
Because I didn't have responsibility, if you think about it. So a lot of stuff that they didn't have, I was getting with them, but there was stuff that I didn't get. That we would leave outside, like little stuff that didn't really matter because my life was kind of a lot better, I thought. So my sister was taken out of the home because she was, she went through a lot and she was showing her behavior a lot.
Okay.
So she had to go somewhere else. She went to Madonna Heights. So I stayed. I got to stay with them. They wanted to adopt me. I got along with them. I did what I was supposed to do. I loved their regimen. I liked what they were giving me and everything. And I was okay how they treated me different because it was better than what I went through.
Okay.
That's how I looked at it.
Okay. So
one day, the lady left, the foster mom, which I got along with, and she left me home with her son. And he says to me, hey, come here, I want to show you something. And it was in a den. I was like, oh, and he had a show on. And he goes, you want to try something? And I tried it, and it was liquor, but it was like licorice liquor.
Okay.
And I tried a little bit, and I didn't like the taste. He's like, just drink more and more. And he was like, and I was like, so I tried more, and it made me a little tipsy. I didn't like it, so I told him I didn't like it, and he had me sit in the den with him. So I sat in the den with him, and he showed me a show that was not appropriate for me to see. Okay. It was like a porn thing, whatever. So I started getting nervous because I didn't like the way my body felt, and I already experienced things from my past now,
Yeah, sure.
and now it's going, and I'm thinking to myself, what is going on?
Right.
So he says, wait, I got to show you, can you help me with my bed? He had a water bed, and he's like, can you help me with my bed because I can't get it? And now I'm thinking all right, why is he bringing me into a room? But I was like, let me go and just help him with his bed, and I left the door open. His mom wasn't home yet. She did some errands. And as he was proceeding to draw me onto the bed and everything, take my clothes off, the doorbell rang, the front door. And it was UPS. And you have to sign back then for UPS. Okay. And that's what saved me. And I ran into my bedroom because it was across the hall, and his mom came home. I didn't tell his mom because not because I wasn't afraid not to tell her. I was close with her, and I had to tell her what her son did to me.
Yeah.
Or tried to do with me.
Yeah.
So I went down to a couple blocks, and I went to a guy's house that I know, a couple of our friends, and he was home because, I went there, knocked on the door, and I told him. And I said, I don't know what to do with this because I lived there, and I didn't want to go to another place, but I don't want to go home either. So I went to the crisis teacher at school because he said, you need to tell somebody.
Yeah.
So I told the crisis teacher. Right away, she has to call CPS. So my social worker comes, picks me up, and now I have to go to tell this lady that what her son did. So I knocked on the door like if I didn't live there. She opened the door. She said, why are you knocking? I was like, oh, because I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I told her what her son did. And she said to me, I'll get rid of him. I don't want to get rid of you. And me, being a young kid, was like, no, that's your son. Like, I'm not going to let you do that. I said, I'm just going to leave and go somewhere else. She goes, well, I'm not going to let him back into this house. She's like, and they were going to adopt me. And I left because I just felt that was the right thing.
Sure.
I was almost 9 years old. And that was like,
oh my gosh.
So then I went to Seabury Barn, which is a co-ed a home where you just go and you stay until they can place you to foster care.
Okay.
Because now, in foster care, you got to carry your black bag again, a garbage bag, bring it to the next place. You got to sit at the social services place and wait for them to place you. So now I go into Seabury Barn, which is in Stony Brook, and upstairs was the girls and downstairs was the boys. And you have some kids that are behavioral and some kids that aren't. So I did everything I was supposed to do. Like every time they told me to do something, I did it because I just really honestly wanted to feel at home somewhere and loved. Like I don't even care if you gave me all the rules in the world. I just wanted to do it. So I did it. And the counselors really got connected with me. Mm-hmm. So instead of staying there for 30 days, I was able to stay for 60. Mm-hmm. So I stayed there for 60 days and I went to, they called me up and they said that they had another home for me. Mm-hmm. And I said, I really don't want to go. I really honestly tried to run away because I did not know who else to trust.
Sure.
At all. Because every place that they sent me to, it was like, I didn't trust anybody. I didn't even know who to trust. First, I didn't trust my parents. Now I'm going into these homes. So I go into the next home, which is in East Northport. Mm-hmm. And it was 5 girls, including myself, into this home. And she got on the phone with me and she was begging me to come. And I was like, I don't trust anybody. I went through all this stuff and I was young. So I'm thinking to myself, like, like years are going by. I'm in all these different foster homes. I went into so many of them. Yeah. And now this was my last foster home because now I'm older, and getting older and stuff. So I go into this last home after all the years of switching different foster homes because it wasn't just after that home I went to. After Seabury Barn, I went to stationary homes and stuff. So now they're like, this is it. My social worker's like, I promise you, this is going to be it. They're good people. And the lady says to me, she goes, you're going to have your own TV? And I'm like, what does that got to do with anything? You're going to have your own this and everything. So I let my guard down and I went.
Okay.
The girls were great. Right. All the girls that I stayed with, I got along with. Yeah. I mean, everybody I got along with. And then her son-in-law and his wife, which is her daughter, lived there with their daughter in a basement. And her husband, my foster mother and foster dad and we lived upstairs. So we had to go to work. We had to get a job at 16. Now I'm 16.
Okay.
So we had to, 15, 16, we had to get a job.
Were you in school too?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had to get a job. I worked at Wallbound.
Okay.
And she said we had to work. Now she's getting funding and everything. She said we had to go and we had to pay for our cable in our room. So I was like, whatever. Yeah. I'm going to do whatever I got to do. Yeah. So we did it. I was the youngest. The other girls were older. And then we got a new girl, a younger girl. She was like 7 at the time. We had to buy our own food and stuff. And we kept our stuff in our room except for the stuff that had to go in the refrigerator. So I worked. I did that. I went to school and I babysat. Wow. She was an alcoholic. She drank bottles and bottles of alcohol. She was abusive, put us down, degraded us, everything. And the girls were fine because they were there many years. And I'm like, and I would say to them, here I am, like, why are you guys going to accept that? Like, that she's doing that. She's like, I'm not saying nothing. Where else we're going to go? We've always been switched around. So they were all gone and everything. And so my foster mother would buy her granddaughter all these great things. And the little girl that shared a room with me and another girl was put off like she didn't exist. And I would buy her stuff like I was her mom. Like I would buy stuff from Walbounds and keep snacks and give it to her for school and pack a little backpack and everything and do all those things so she could feel like that. Because I've been where she was, you know?
Yeah.
So they treated her so different. And then again, I think about all the times that, you know, are they doing this for the money? Because it's so sad how you could treat somebody and say you want to love them and you don't. So they all left, and the foster son-in-law was home, and I was sitting on a chair in the living room that she would sit on. And it was like almost like a rocker chair, but it was like one of those lazy boy chairs. And I was sitting on there and I had my legs like this. And he came over and he sat in between me. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he locked. And then he took me and he got me where I was in between his legs now. And he just started like fondling me and doing whatever. And I started thinking it was me. Like I started covering myself up more. I never wore like anything that was provocative or anything, but I started covering myself up because now I'm thinking like, where is going on? Like this guy's touching me and everything. And I wind up talking to the girls, and it was happening to somebody else, but they didn't want to say nothing. So I rode my bike up to a week or so later. I rode my bike up. I was going into B17, and I rode my bike up to, I wasn't even 17 yet, where she worked at a stationery store, and her husband happened to be there. And I said, listen, I'm gonna ask to leave. I don't want to be here no more. I was like, I'm sorry. I can't stay here. The abuse, everything. She goes, well, that's fine, whatever you want to do. She's like, but could you stay for my mortgage into the end of the month because I have to pay my mortgage? And I just looked like, wow, like that's the saddest thing. Like, I can't believe that. Like, that's what you're worried about, your mortgage? I didn't stay.
Yeah, of
I didn't
course.
stay.
Good.
I left.
Good.
And then I stayed with my friend because I had nowhere else to go. I didn't want to go back to foster home. I told my social worker, I'm not going anywhere else ever. And back then, they didn't do the security that they do now. So I didn't see my family members on my dad's side for a long time, many years, because I was in foster care. Nobody came to visit, nothing. My dad came, my mom didn't. I got emancipated. I got awarded the courts. So in other words, my parents signed all rights over to me because they didn't want to take care of us. They didn't want to deal with the courts were telling them to do. So I didn't know what that meant. So I was ordered to courts now. And that means, you know, the state owns me, like everything, you know, they take care of me.
Okay.
So I was going to say, here I'm thinking, all right, I'm free. I'm going to go with my friends. They're all moving to Florida. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
So I went to Shirley to say goodbye to my family that I haven't seen in many years.
Yeah.
And my aunt and uncle, who I was at, said, what are you doing? I was like, I'm going to go to Florida. My stuff's in the trunk. I'm going. I'm going to start a different life. I'm thinking I'm going to do all these great things. And with a guy and friends and stuff like that. And my aunt said, well, what do you want? Like, if we were to take you in as foster care, what would you want? Because now they could still, because you could stay until you're 18, you know, even like 20, whatever. So I'm like, I wasn't even 17 at the time yet. And I said, you would take me in as a foster care? Like, and she's like, yeah, we'll let you live here. What would you like? And I remember sitting on the couch and I said, all I want is stability and somebody to tell me what to do and responsibility and love. That's it. And I remember saying all these things. I said, I really want just somebody telling me what to do, what I have to do, show me what it is. And I remember saying all these things. And my aunt said, well, we'll talk to your social worker, because I didn't get signed out yet. So they wound up taking me in as a foster parents. And they just were very controlling. And I was okay with that because I went from all this to like that. But I did a lot of praying, a lot. And I was always praying. I didn't know exactly, but I just did a lot.
Wow.
And I started doing like things in the book, writing stuff and everything. They took the foster level to a whole nother level. Like they felt they control. And I was At the time, I was there a year or so. I went to school, graduated. I was graduating. It was right before graduation. And they would make me walk to school, make me write essays. My dad made us do that. My dad used to make us write like thousands of times. He would make us stand in a corner with books on our hands, and we wasn't allowed to move. If we moved, he would put more books on us and more books. And we would stay there for hours and hours,
Oh my
sometimes to the next day.
goodness.
He would beat our feet with 2x4s. And I'm thinking all this stuff as I'm living with my aunt and uncle, who's their brother.
Right.
And they started making me write essays as like not even a punishment, just to be controlled. And I started thinking of all the things my dad did to me, like, like the punishments that we didn't even need to get punished because we were good kids. So I found a place to move into, a studio apartment by myself, paying $450 a month, working at Roy Rogers, walking to school every single day just so I can get my head right and just connect.
Wow, Michelle.
So I lived on my own. And that's when I started growing more and more towards my faith, because I was free and I felt it. And I lived in a studio apartment, walked to school, met a guy that I thought that was, great and everything. But my biggest thing was that I knew that God was there, because
Wow.
if you go through everything that you went through, and it was a lot more abuse than I'm sharing,
Yeah.
you don't need to value that. You look where I am today. That just explains every single thing, from writing on Post-its to believing myself to knowing that no matter what, he stood by me, and he still is. Because how else can I explain to you that this man is not real when I went through all that and some afterwards, like the second part. So when people ask me that, and I have siblings and they turned out different and they wonder why I turned out, and I
Yeah.
know, and they all took different roads than I did, it's because God was on that road.
Wow.
And I believe that, because I'm here today sharing with you.
Wow. How did you even have an interest in God? How did that even happen?
Well, when I spoke to the day that I looked up, I felt it.
Yeah.
It's a feeling that, you can only feel.
Yeah.
And he carried me through everything. How else can I not? Like, he's just been by me. Even through every single thing in my life, he's been through everything. Even with my second testimony, when I speak about that, he has been there.
Wow.
There's nothing else I can say, is that I feel him.
Yeah.
When I have worry, I feel him. When I have
Yeah.
doubt, I feel him. Because I had a lot of worry, I had a lot of doubt, and I had a lot of people that failed me.
Right.
And he didn't, and he still isn't.
Yes.
He isn't. That's the only thing that chokes me up. I don't cry about my past. I cry because God has been with me.
Yes.
Like, that's why I get teary-eyed, not because it was a lesson. Those were bad teachers.
Yeah.
God was a good teacher.
Amen. Oh my
And
gosh.
that's
I
the
love
truth.
that. Wow. Wow. Michelle, that was some testimony. That really was, from start to finish. I mean, there was so much that I just, it's interesting, because as you were sharing your story, there was so many moments throughout all of that trauma and just destruction and there's no words to define all of that happened. It just, demonic is the only thing I can think of. But as you're sharing, I kept on just almost praying, like, Lord, where are you? Like,
He was there.
I know. And I love that, because throughout your story, just felt like it was so many times of just you showing so much tenacity and strength and courage in all of those interactions that you had with each person, where you said, no, like, I'm not gonna be afraid. I mean, you were like barely 8 years old, and you were sitting in the car, and you decided to share the story with the woman, and with the person who did it to you, right in the back seat. And you had so much strength and so much courage, and you met everything head on. You didn't power in any way. And if you did as a child, it would make complete sense if you did, but you didn't. And that shows so much about you. It shows so much in your fight to just say, not only am I going to fight for my life to get better in certain ways. I mean, packing your car to go to Florida and deciding to give people another chance. I mean, you just had so much faith in humanity that didn't get tarnished by any of that. And it would make so much sense if it did, but it didn't for you. You just continued to be so tenacious and so courageous and so incredibly strong at such a young age. You know, I look at people who are 7, 8 years old and everything that you had, the abandonment that you had, the complete lack of being able to trust any person that said anything to you. And yet, through all of that, you still desired a relationship with God, where you could have said, you know, you could have cursed God in your heart, but instead you decided to say, no, I know that there's something more. I know when I look out that window, I know when I look up at the sky that I feel something happening inside of me, that something's different. You were just so anointed from the moment that all those things happened. You were just so anointed. You were completely set apart. And I think it's so beautiful that you can look back and that even during that time that you could remember feeling his presence and knowing he was there. And, you know, yes, when you look back, you can sense that his presence was there. But even the way that you were just speaking about during that time, that you would know when you look out the window that it was him, you know, in you working. And through all the abuse and the abandonment and the complete destruction in your life and chaos and complete, you were in death in your life, but you chose life and you chose to see that there was something more than what you were going through in your circumstances. And at such a young age to have that is so unique and so profound. And I can't even, respect isn't even a high enough word for what I feel towards you right now. It just doesn't even do it justice. But, you know, one of the things that you kept on saying that I just found so beautiful was that you just kept on saying that he was just right there with you.
He was.
And I love that because I love the name Emmanuel because he is the God with us. And I love that even throughout all your testimony and all that tumultuous times that you dealt with, that you still knew that there was something that was holding you and keeping you and being with you. And I love that you can look back now, but that you also can see such a strength and a fire inside of you that is just already living in such victory. And my heart's applauding you right now because
Thank you.
I know that this story is going to give people such an insight into that you can come from death and you can come from so much destruction, but you can still sense God's hand. And I think it's so beautiful that I didn't know anything about your story. I didn't know anything about you. And I feel such a connection to you right now because of different reasons, that it just shows so much humility that you have towards the Lord and towards your own life and your own walk, that you can honestly say that throughout all of that time that you were able to trust him and know that he was right there with you. And because we have a God that we can know and trust, that no matter what we're going through is always with us.
Yes, he is.
Because we have a God who is always with us no matter what, we can live our life in his love.
So true.
Amen.
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 Thank you for joining us today. If you like what you just experienced, please subscribe and share this story with a friend. You can also follow us on our social media platforms listed in the description. You're welcome to take a seat with us at Experience Church in Bethpage, Long Island, or You can visit us on our website at www.experiencechurchag.org. We pray that you too can experience what it's like to live your life in God's love. Be blessed.